Let's listen to a story.
He said, yeah, I think it probably
limestone. They tried to extract part of the image that's on the shroud, and there's nothing that
Whether this is as loud as this guy gets, so I can't make it louder. But listen,
comes off of it because, as Dale said, it's a superficial image. It really doesn't exist. So they weren't able to actually extract anything off of the image itself, but they found pollen, limestones, and stuff like that. And so you're exactly right, Mike.
And you said there was actual blood and bodily fluids on it, correct?
actual blood, body fluids on the shroud. Listen.
So that's how I finish my talks. And I'll never forget. I was talking with Barry. As you guys know, Barry professed not to be a believer. I think he might have been a closet.
Barry Schwortz, not a believer. He's ethnically Jewish. He's one of the leading experts on the shroud. Look what he tells Mike Licona.
Christian myself, but that's just.
No, I asked him about that. I asked him about it when
I directly asked him about it.
Yeah, I asked him. I said, "Now you're Jewish agnostic, right, Barry?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Now you think the Shroud of Turin? Do you think it's authentic?" He said, "Yeah, I think it probably is authentic." "Do you think it belonged to Jesus?" He said, "I don't know, but I think it probably did."
Look.
And I said, "Well, do you have any naturalistic explanations?" He said, "Nope, the resurrection is probably the best explanation for it."
You hear it? An agnostic Jew, he says, the best explanation for this image that you cannot explain away naturalistically, maybe it's the resurrection. Best explanation. He's a Jewish agnostic. Look what Mike asked him.
I said, "Then why don't you become a Christian?" He said, "It just doesn't interest me."
See that?
I said, well, wait a minute. So you think that this is probably, as a Jewish agnostic, you think this probably, and you've actually worked on the shroud. You've seen it. You've been there. You've photographed it. You believe it is the authentic, probably the authentic burial cloth of Jesus that was probably created, the image on it, through his resurrection. And you don't think this is relevant to your life or important? And he said, "No, it just doesn't interest me."
Yeah.
I said, "Do you think it should interest you?" And he said, I just don't care. It's like,
But
wow.
Here's the
I just don't care. I don't care. Whether he's been raised to life, he's alive, who cares? Now watch the blood, why there was blood on the shroud. He's not going to talk about Barry. Listen carefully to this. This is going to break your heart and shock you. Break your heart and shock you. Watch here.
Here's the thing. That was his shtick, though. That was what made him such a valuable speaker on the shroud. Was he literally told me, he goes, "Dave, I don't have a horse in this race. I don't care if you get saved or not. I don't care." You know, and that's what made his appeal to it so amazing. Was it's almost like enemy testimony. You know what I mean? But
there was certainly an unsympathetic expert.
Yes. So I asked him. I said, "Okay, why do you believe the shroud to be true then? If you have no horse in the race, you don't, you know what I mean? Like, why?" And
he's asking Barry Schwortz, why do you believe it's genuine? It's authentic. Listen to what they discovered about that blood. It's going to break your heart. What Jesus went through, but it's going to amaze you. He's alive. He's alive.
And his answer has stuck with me to this day and will be for the rest of my life. He said in 1978, Alan Adler and I were walking side by side. They came in the room 2 by 2. As soon as they turned the corner, Alan's another Jewish man. So as soon as they turned the corner, they both said out loud to each other, "It's a fake." I said, "Why'd you say that?" He goes, "Because the blood's still got a reddish shade to it. And everybody knows that when blood oxidizes, it turns almost black. You know, it's."
See it? The blood color is still red. They thought it's proof it's a fake because blood, when it oxidizes, it turns black. But then they realized something amazing blew them away, convinced them it's real. Listen to this. Why was it red?
Such a dark brown that it's almost black. And he goes, the red blood was significantly pointing to the fact that this is some sort of fraudulent claim that it's his. And he said for 30 years, all the evidence kept pointing back to its authenticity. So one day, Alan calls him and he says, "Barry, are you sitting down?" And Barry said, "No, I'm driving." He said, "Well, pull your car over." And so Barry said, I pulled the car over, and I said, "What is it?" Because he's like, "Why are you making me?" And all of a sudden, Alan says, "Barry, I know why the blood is red." And Barry said he was like, "Man, I saw 30 years of research go past my face, And so he explains it to me. Alan started volunteering for some body farm where you can donate your cadaver to science, and they'll, put a body under a tree or in a trunk of a car, or lay it in a bed, or lay it in a lake, and then they'll document the decomposition process so that when an investigator finds a body under a tree, they can do reverse forensics and say, okay, this body's been here for 2 weeks and 2 days. Who went missing 2 weeks and 2 days ago? And they can solve cases that way. It's a pretty cool science. Not for me. I'm not. I think I'd vomit every day that I'd show up for work. But anyway, so those
just as long as the experiment doesn't reach a dead end.
Oh,
yeah. I'll confirm.
Like saving that one up. So here's what Alan found when they were doing the research: victims who were traumatized beyond the body's ability to create blood, because you can only make so much blood so fast. That's why when you go to donate blood, you can only give so much, because your body can only create new blood so fast. When a victim came in and was laid in a bed per se, and they had been traumatized by some sort of either a decapitation, loss of limb, massive bodily injury, whatever it was, that they couldn't produce the blood fast enough, they literally bled out. Well, your body's awesome. God's created us in an awesome way, and so what happens is your heart's going, okay, I've got to send liquid out. I've got to keep the body alive, because blood is the life source to the flesh. And so what happens when somebody's in that position is your body goes down through the liver and pulls out something known as bilirubin. It's a serum known as bilirubin.
Jared, your body pulls out from your liver bilirubin serum. You see it? Right? Bilirubin serum. This is what convinced them the Shroud is authentic. Listen to this. Bilirubin serum. Watch it again. Listen.
Your body goes down through the liver and pulls out something known as bilirubin. It's a serum known as bilirubin, pumps it up to the heart, and the heart begins pumping bilirubin out, trying to keep the body alive. So when a traumatized victim's laid down, after they're dead, what's actually coming out of their wounds isn't necessarily blood anymore. It's a serum known as bilirubin. Well, when bilirubin oxidizes, it's high in iron. When iron oxidizes, iron turns a rusty red color.
It turns into a rusty red color. But you understand what that means, right? Jesus went into such trauma, physical trauma, that his body dug into the liver to bring out bilirubin serum to keep him alive from the physical trauma of the beating and the crucifixion. That's the pain Jesus went through.
Which is what we find on the shroud. So 2-day-old blood, 2-week-old blood, 2-month-old blood, or 2,000-year-old blood still remains a reddish tone. And so he goes, that was the last piece of evidence that I needed to be convinced. Well, let me just go ahead and tell you, throw the shroud away. Let's just say it's not true at all. You know what I mean? Just throw. That day, it hit me what Jesus went through on that cross, because according to the Old Testament, he had to match the sacrificial laws in order to be the perfect sacrifice. Blood's the life source of the flesh. He was God-man in the flesh. And I think when he said, "It is finished," I've heard a lot of really good sermons on "it is finished." But that day that Barry told me that about the bilirubin, it dawned on me that's most likely what we're looking at on the shroud is when he was bleeding out. And John said, "I saw blood and water come from the pericardial event." What he was actually bleeding out wasn't even blood anymore. He had literally given his last drop of blood sitting on that cross, hung on that cross, and he said, "It is finished." And Mike, that rocked my world, man. And so
he gave every last ounce of his blood, which is why the liver had to now pump out bilirubin. And it's high in iron, and when oxidizes, it becomes rusty red. And then so that Jewish guy and his friend, they were convinced this is authentic. Shroud is authentic.
I always close my talk. I'm like, look, have you given Jesus at least 51% ownership of your life?
Yes.
Because if you're a business owner, you know that at 50-50, you still have to go to a board meeting. 51%, whoever has 51% gets say. What about 60%? Can we give him 60%? What about 62%? How about if we challenge us to go 71% of our lives that is dedicated to getting him full? I just challenge people because that day that challenged me. So like I said, just throw the cloth away and let's say it's not even whatever. It doesn't change what he did on the cross for us on that moment. So that blew me away. That's
Okay.
That changed. I was already a sold out Christian. That made me even more just.
Amen.
I gotta try and. I tell people I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to repay him for what he did.
Amen.
I'll never be able to do it.
Amen.
I can't.
Amen.
But watch me try. Watch me.
So there you go.